Hello and welcome back to Whispers from the Soul. And today on Life After Life, we have another guest who has had an NDE. And this time we're going all the way to Dallas, Texas. And we're going to talk about a person who is not only an NDEer, but is also a poet. She's an artist. She paints beautiful paintings, abstract paintings, a yogi, and an entrepreneur. So let's give a big welcome to Chrystal Rae. Hello, Chrystal.
Hi, Peter. So nice to be on your show. Thank you for the invitation. Nice to
Thanks for
meet you.
being here. Thanks for being here. It's great to meet people from all over the world, all different types of people from all over the world. I mean, we've interviewed people from Colombia, from the United States, from Spain, from Italy, from all different places, Greece, and so it's great to meet different people because as I was saying before we started, they all come with near enough the same message. They're explained in a different way, and there's each person has their own perception of what they receive and what they perceive, and they explain it a different way, but more or less they say about the same thing. So, first of all, Krista, I'd like you to talk about before your NDE, what sort of person were you like?
So I'm going to take you back in time.
Okay.
Um, I my experience of out of body experience started when I was very young. I had a very dysfunctional home life, and my mom was an alcoholic. My dad was absent, so I was the adult in the house, very young, and I was always a deep thinker. Like at a very young age, I had concepts like if you're a good person, then you'll just be good for the sake of being good and not to get to heaven, not to avoid hell. This is not something that the average, 10-year-old thinks about. And I remember having a near-death experience when I was very young. My mom had woken up early with a hangover or not feeling well, and she had told me to do something the week before, which was to clean this spot off the ceiling in the kitchen, which with all my other little girl chores of taking care of the house and the children and the cooking and the cleaning and going to school, I hadn't gotten to. So she was really upset and she dragged me down to the kitchen and pointed at the spot. And I was like, oh God, I forgot to do that. And um, I started to clean this task of cleaning the oil or the grease off the kitchen ceiling. And I remember I was in this really dark place, like really sad. Like if your soul could be sad at 10 years old or 11 years old or however old I was so long ago.
Yeah.
I remember just feeling extremely sad and questioning like the meaning of life. And I remember thinking that I had heard about the stories of God, the Christian version anyway, of the stories of God, which was, punitive and very judgmental and supposedly loving, but if you didn't toe the line, you were going to be, for this finite point in time, which is 89 years, 100 years, whatever we live, you were going to suffer for eternity, which seemed like the math was off.
That's right. You're right there. And being punished or something, yeah.
Punitive thing. And so I was thinking, well, I want to be a good person, but not to avoid hell and not to get to heaven. I just want to be good. And that was actually, Peter, my first experience of self-worth. Because when you come from a dysfunctional home, and I'm sure many of your viewers will relate with this, you feel as though you're not good enough. And you feel like it's your fault that your parents are treating you the way they're treating, or they have the addictions that they have. And so I remember this was like I went like, oh my God, that means I am a good person. And then I started having this really lovely conversation with God. And I said, well, God, if you're real, then of course, and you've created the universe and the cosmos and so on and so forth, then you could do one thing for me. And the,
Right.
the thing I requested was that I wanted to know that God was real, but not after I died, because that seemed like cheating or like who not much fun. But I wanted to know before I died.
Right.
And by the way, and I remember adding, and by the way, which seemed even more impossible, and this is all while I'm on the counter cleaning the ceiling. If you help my mom stop drinking, then I would truly believe there's a God. And with that, I turned around and I walked off of this counter, which was probably about a 5 foot counter. And if you ever walk off of a counter, it's kind of like you're stepping into a swimming pool. And the physics of it is that your head falls first and your body follows. And I remember in that moment there was three of me. There was the body falling, the soul essence that lived within my body, and this omnipresent observer that was dispassionate about the whole thing, that was also me watching this. But what I related to was neither of the two extremes, but the soul essence that lived within me. I
Right.
was falling through this kind of vortex of time and space.
Right.
In the middle, I was in a fetus position, and I'm not even sure if this tornado was going up or if I was falling down. It was hard to tell, but I ended up in a serene, let's say, vastness of night,
Right.
speckled with radiant light or stars. And there was this understanding that was communicated to me. This is time and space,
Right.
and there's no empty space. This is what I was told. There's no empty space, but this is time and space. And those stars, that's what you are. And with that, I was back in my body. And I was like standing on my feet, which is kind of like a cat. How did you do that? Standing on my feet, looking at the ground, and I thought, you try to rationalize. And I thought, okay, I fell, I saw stars, I had this really lovely dream
Right.
where I felt, by the way, all encompassing acceptance and love.
Right.
And somehow, so I must have like a bruise or a bump or something on my forehead. So I went to the bathroom, no bruise, no bump. I called my brother. I was like, Mark, God saved me. And again, this is very weird to be saying in my house where it was basically either agnostic or atheist. God
Right.
wasn't, I always make the joke, he wasn't welcome in our house unless he was damned. So, so my brother was like, "What?" I said, "God saved me. There was three of me, and this and that." And he's like, "Have you lost your mind? Do you need a straitjacket?" I remember precisely him saying that. And then we both started laughing. And I said, Mark, don't ever forget this because I never want to. I know it sounds incredible, even to me, but I don't want to think this is a dream sometime in the future, which is really funny now because my brother, Mark, is a minister and he has completely different belief systems than I do, which I honor and respect for him, but I don't necessarily adhere to. But
Right.
he's the one who is my witness. So that sent me off on a journey. I
Right.
started calling Sunday school buses. I went to every kind of church you could go to, from Pentecostal to Catholic to Christian to charismatic Christian. And my mom and dad had thought I lost my mind because I was waking up early, I was walking to church, I was reading the Bible, which, by the way, when you're like, 11, 12 years old, reading the Bible, and I read it 7 times forward and back. Um, I was petrified by this apocalyptic, punitive expression of God that was, coming after me. So that was really challenging. And I went to all these different churches. I was baptized 5 times because I didn't want to lie and say I felt it. I'm not a liar. So
No.
I would
Of course.
out and they would say, "You're reborn, you're new life. How do you feel?" And I'm like, "I feel the same." Not feel reborn. Um, and there were such lovely people in these churches, though, and they really embraced me, and I'm really grateful for that experience. But at some point, my home life was so bad. I
Yeah.
left home early. I left home at 17 years old, as soon as I could get out, that I had to put all this spiritual stuff on, being a young, beautiful woman on your own at 17 is very hard.
I
It's just
bet it
really
is. I bet it is.
was a challenge. And my mom's, when she, because I did my research, I literally called and made sure I could leave without being thrown into a home or something. And
Right.
that you can leave home in Texas, at least at 17, without
Right.
they can't do anything about it, right?
Right.
And so my mom said, well, if you're going to be a whore, a prostitute, this, that, the other. And it made me so mad, Peter. And I was like, that was like the best, even though it broke my heart, because
Yeah.
what I really wanted my mom to say was, come home. I
Mm.
love you.
Of course.
We'll work this out.
Yeah.
And it wasn't within her capacity to do
Mm.
that.
Mm.
Here's the amazing thing about that story is that me leaving home broke my mom's heart because
Yeah.
she really did love her children. She just couldn't manage her own emotions. So she started going to church
Hmm.
and she really flipped her life around. She did the whole pendulum over to the other side. She stopped drinking, she stopped smoking. She did start eating and she got really, really big for a while until she got sick. But because she never worked on the root problem, which was the core of her addiction, I think, and the core of all addictions is not the addiction itself, but what's underneath it.
Of course.
But anyway, so that, the second part of my prayer to God helped my mom stop drinking actually did come true. And it was a result of me leaving home. So all of that happened. I went to school, I made straight A's, I graduated cum laude, blah, blah. I got married, had children, and um, as happens also with a lot of children from dysfunctional homes, I chose a husband who couldn't really see my value. You
Mm,
know,
mm,
it was, and I was never good enough, and I was always trying to prove myself to him,
right.
and he wasn't be in the relationship. He just was, I guess I was really needy, to be honest, and he
Mm,
wanted to date someone, but after that we didn't have much in common.
yeah.
And so we're still friends, by the way. He's like the kind of hero of my life. He's such a good friend and such a wonderful man, just not wasn't a wonderful husband for me. He's actually remarried and a very good and kind husband to his second wife.
That's
He's
good.
a lovely person. But when I got divorced from him, I mean, I felt like Cinderella, that the slipper didn't fit, and that I had been exposed, that I was actually, the big-footed stepsister that,
Let's see.
and that I was not good enough. And all the insecurities of childhood came rushing back, even though I had been a model, even though I had all kinds of, accolades for
Yeah.
my inner beauty, it never hit for me. I
Right.
always felt worthy and not good enough.
Right.
And I waited like a year and a half, and my first dating situations was bringing me to the near death experience that I want to share with you today. And what I learned from that was with a really nice gentleman, but I wasn't really ready to date. And he invited me to go with him and his family to a ski trip in Vail, which I said, well, I'm not really ready for that. And he said, well, just bring a chaperone, bring a friend, just bring someone and come. So I brought my cousin, Carmen, with me, and we went on this trip. And it turned out that I just really wasn't ready to be there or to be in that environment. And so I said to him, and I said to Carmen, who, by the way, Carmen is this beautiful, dark haired, doughy skinned, big eyed clarinetist for the Dallas Opera, really brilliant, high IQ woman, 40 years old at the time, single. And we had fun, but I said, are you ready to go home? She said, yes. We'd only been there a couple of days. So on the way back to the airport, um, my friend lost control of the small red Jeep that we were in, and we went spiraling down this highway and ended up spiraling. And the car coming down the mountain could not stop and hit us on my side of the door. And we flew off this cliff, which happened to be 80 feet to the bottom,
My goodness.
and hit at about 25, like a rocky cliff. And then we flipped 10 times. During this whole experience, I was outside of my body.
You saw it from a different perspective.
Yeah. I was watching this from the moment that the car started spinning and time slowed down until it was like non-existent.
Right.
Uh, I was both inside my body as the experiencer, but outside my body as the observer. And
Right.
I was in a luminous presence. I won't say that there was a being there, but I was in a luminous presence that was all encompassing and cradling me and holding me as I watched the scene, And I remember, because of my childhood experience, I never had a fear of death, but everybody else in the Jeep was screaming. He was like trying to, this, and Carmen was screaming, and she was hitting her head on, the Jeeps had this little bar, and so she
Yeah.
was hitting her head on
Robot.
this, and then she was hitting her head on this side. And I remember looking back, and I was in the passenger seat and looking back and just feeling so much compassion for her. Like, oh my God, I've never seen so much fear.
Yeah.
And in this moment, I'm like being held in this luminous presence, and I'm being shown that I have various options for my life. First of all, I'm shown a panoramic life review where I'm showed forward, backward, up, down, sideways on vertical and horizontal planes of my life, which is hard to encompass. And I'm not only shown my own actions, but I'm shown the ripple of those actions, and not not just a short distance, but off into infinity, which is unbelievable to kind of like understand the all-encompassing effect of every single action that we have and how it's all interconnected.
Yeah.
But I was shown from a place of compassion, not from a place of judgment.
Judgment.
And
Yeah.
I was held in those darker moments, and I was cradle to my own shame and
Right.
guilt, and shown that in each moment we're all doing that the best that we can with the
To-
possibilities that we have in that moment. Because we come in with some predispositions, like we want to come in. Some of us will come in anxious. Some of us will come in with depression. Some of us will come in with in bad circumstances, and we choose these circumstances. A high IQ, a low IQ, high sexual drive is another thing that people like go crazy about in this lifetime, or desire for more of material acquisition. And so I was shown, this compassionate and for me, my journey is I had always wanted to be good, good girl, because I didn't feel good, like a good enough, and I didn't feel worthy. And I was shown that wanting to be good was like a heavy backpack from my soul, because what happened is that I was trying to be good to prove something rather than being good for goodness sake, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was like a heavy backpack. There was no joy. And I was shown that we have timelines. One of my timelines was I could exit the planet and that would be fine. And then I said, oh no, I can't leave my children. They'd be orphans. Of course, they had a dad, but for some reason I said they'd be orphans.
Yeah.
And they showed me, I was shown, I say they, it was a presence. I was shown that my children were fine without me, and I was shown the ripple of their life forward without me, from my funeral to getting married, going through college, having children of their own. I was like, oh, each soul is here for the bliss of its own existence.
Of course.
I'm not the center point of my children, which was shocking to me. Instead of that, I get to be part of their evolutionary process, but it's not a necessary part of it.
Right.
And if I
Yeah.
were to then that would be fine for their souls. So I was shown that it was like I get to, not that I have to. And that was a big awakening for me, because that the responsibility went away, like I have to be here for them, and the
Yeah.
joy of
Yeah.
them rose, like I
Mm.
get to be here for them. I want to be here for them. And that was a huge shift for me.
Yeah.
Uh, and then I was shown that I could come back with different experiences of crystal. I could come back and have some disabilities, like some spinal issues or some mental, you know,
Yeah.
limitations,
Yeah.
or, break every bone in my body. Like there was lots of different things. Or I could do the one that I chose, which I was shown that you could come back and write a book and tell the world that love is all that matters. And I remember my soul lighting up with that. And I think it's kind of interesting that the girl who felt so unloved
Yeah.
and worthy of love was the one to come back and tell the world that love is all that matters, in the unique way that I can speak my own truth. And so I was really excited about that. And I really was kind of lit up about that. But I was also not very sure how I would do that. Like, how would I do that? I didn't know. Kind of what we talked about earlier when you had this experience with someone and they asked you to spread the message in the way that you can. And you were like, I've never done that. And that was kind of how I felt. Like, I've never done that, but I wanted to. And then this being, this presence says, and oh, by the way, don't forget to put in your book that sound and light is the future of medicine. And I was like, this is 30 years ago. Now, obviously, science has caught up. I mean, there's all kinds of studies and scientific discoveries on the healing effect of sound on our cellular structure. We're basically water. Dr. Emoto's work is
That's right.
phenomenal in talking about how, the the intention that we put into our words or we project onto something changes the very structure of it.
Of course.
But this was not something that was very prevalent back, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I'll put that in there. And one of the things that happened posteriorly to the accident is that if somebody touched me, I would feel all of their joy, all of their sorrow, and I would know what they were thinking, their deepest secrets. And there was so much fear in people. So it was hard for me after the accident. Like I kind of locked myself up in my room because I wasn't really a spiritual girl. I was really more on the religious path, looking for truth in religion.
Yeah.
Because I always thought spiritual was a little woo-woo, a little cray-cray.
Yeah, well, a lot of people back then thought it was like that. But now, thank God it's changed because in
Yes.
the last 10, 20, well, 50, 10, 15 years, there's been a lot more. They still call it New Age, but it's not New Age anymore. It used to be New Age, but now it's much deeper. I believe it's much deeper. So it's changed a little bit. But yeah, back then, I thought it was also woo-woo.
So I really it was uncomfortable for me to know. I've almost felt like I was invading people
Right.
by knowing their thoughts. I don't know if you ever saw this movie called The Dead Zone. Anyway, in the dead zone, one thing that happens to him after he's had a near-death experience is that he becomes very psychic, and he feels people's feelings. He starts to help the police find murderers and this and that. But the point of that of mentioning the movie is that's exactly what happened to me. Is that I had no, I would see auras around people. I didn't even have a terminology for that. I felt their feelings. I knew their thoughts. And I also had this incredible ability just to touch someone and have like a healing presence. I remember when my cousin was in the hospital, like she was air flighted up from the bottom of the cliff, and I was driven to the hospital. Miraculously, all I had from falling 80 feet and flipping 10 times was a severe case of whiplash.
Wow.
But when I went to the hospital, the nurse was a male nurse who received us, and he was very angry. He was like, "You guys were drinking." Of course, I don't even drink. My friend who was driving the car had a couple of glasses of wine, but he was not drunk, and that was over a span of like 4 hours. So I knew for sure it had nothing to do with that. But anyway, he said, we had someone come in yesterday with less injuries than your cousin, and they died. And that's going to be manslaughter or something like this. And I said, what are you talking about? And I kind of like ran into where they had Carmen, and I put my hands on her, and I felt this bolt of like lightning go through the crown of my head and out my hands. And she rippled. And I was like, oh, she's going to be fine. By the way, she did have 18 operations.
My,
And yeah, she broke every bone in her face, and she had 90% brain damage. I mean, this was a serious car wreck. And but I knew in that moment that she was going to be fine. And after her recovery, which nobody could even
believe.
I remember her telling me that she had three beings of light with her the entire time, and they were comforting her. But after her recovery, it enhanced her musical ability. She became the lead clarinetist for the Dallas Opera.
Oh, great.
And her intellect was only slightly lower, but what mainly happened is that she forgot 10 years of being married to two alcoholic husbands, which not a bad deal.
My goodness me.
All she couldn't remember, Peter. That's it. And then she met the love of her life. She now retired from playing in the orchestra, and she has her own real estate company and is doing quite well. So her life turned out fine. But one of the things that happened when I went to visit her, her mom was very Catholic, and she thought, she did not like anything that had to do with spiritual. When I walked in, she was in a
Typical.
and yeah. I walked in, she was in a coma, and she actually scared me because, as I told you, she's this beautiful, radiant, amazing woman, and she had broken every bone in her face. Her eye sockets were broke. She had rubber bands where her teeth were being held in. And I had to like stop and say, this is your cousin Carmen, and you love her. And I took a deep breath, and then I walked over to Carmen and I put my hand on her. And when I did, she opened her eyes, which surprised her mother, her doctor, and the nurse, and she sat up. And then she insisted on getting out, and she wobbled over to me. And this is such a beautiful gift from the universe to me. She said, Chrystal, I'm in the light. I've never been so radiant. I'm gleaming. I'm a star.
How
And
beautiful.
that was took me all the way back to my childhood when I was shown this, vast, serene night, and shown this radiant punctuation of light, which was called stars, and I was told that's what you are. And so, and if you go back in the story, you remember that my request to God, the divine loving force of the universe, was, I want to know that you exist before I die, not after. And that was just another affirmation for me. And she went back to bed and went immediately back into coma. But every time I would come, she would, and touch her, she would wake up and come out of coma. And one time she said, and don't forget to put in your book that love is all that matters, but mainly that sound and light is the future of medicine. So I was like, how does she know that? And after that time, her mother uninvited me to visit because she thought I was doing some kind of poltergeist or something. I don't know.
Fear
Or
of the
for
unknown.
fear of the unknown. It was very sad, but for some years, probably the next 15 years, I didn't even see Carmen.
That's
And
terrible.
I know. And then we reconnected of recent, by the way, because I started to promote my book that I just wrote, and I really didn't remember all the details of the car wreck, but I figured that she would,
Yeah, of course.
like dates and times and all of that. So
Right.
the other thing I wanted to share with you about this like miraculous event is that when they took X-rays of my neck, they told me on the first X-ray that my neck was broken, and I said, "Oh no, no." In my timeline, that's not possible because I had seen the timeline. I said that's not happening. But I wanted to mention it because I put my hand on my neck. I had the same radiant expansion. They took another X-ray, two or three more. I think I had four in total. The last three had no break. And then they said, sign your life away. You can leave, but we don't understand what's happening. But the reason I mention it is because nothing is preset. Even though I was shown this timeline, there was also the option for me to, and it was so closely knitted to this current timeline that it could have been a possibility for me
Yeah.
in that because it
Yeah.
was so close. So we're not necessarily going to jump over, let's say, five or six timelines to something that's a way more radiant or way less radiant because that's too far, we would like self-implode.
Yeah.
Um, but the possibility of going a little bit forward or a little bit back is
Yeah.
always there.
Yeah.
So the way that we evolve is not through huge leaps in consciousness. Usually, it's through these small intentional shifts in consciousness where simply to your point earlier of being of service, of being kind, of being loving,
Mm.
compassionate, of choosing to be kind when you could be cruel,
Yeah.
to stay when you could abandon,
Mm.
to tell the truth when lie would serve you more.
That's right.
And these kinds of things. And I was shown like the simple things in my life were my great successes. It wasn't graduating cum laude or, being a model or any of the accolades that I had accumulated in my life. It was those times when I actually, to your point, Peter, had been of service to myself or others in a loving way, where I had, without any need of receiving anything in return. I had been benevolent and kind and generous with my words, with my presence, with my actions. In particular, I was shown a woman that I had passed on a bench, and for some reason, she just had her head hanging low, and I think she had a baby in her belly, like she was pregnant. And I was like, oh my gosh, this poor woman. She didn't necessarily look like a homeless person, but she looked like she was down and out. So I went and I sat next to this woman, and this was replayed in my near-death experience. And I said, is there anything I can do for you? Are you okay? And she told me her story about, her husband or whoever abandoning her. She had children to feed. She had no job. She had no money. And what I was shown in the near-death experience is she had been contemplating killing herself, like suicide.
Ending it. Yeah.
And I didn't know that when I sat next to her, but always makes me want to cry when I think about this woman.
Oh, of course. Yeah. You never know what effect you're going to have on someone because we.
No, and she had decided, and I was shown that she had decided after that I had been her sign, I guess,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
on. And she made her way through that dark night of the soul, and she ended up becoming successful herself and donating her time at like a kitchen for homeless
Yeah.
and paying it forward. And I was just so shocked that was like, I was shown that was one of the most incredible achievements of my life, which for me, I helped her. I think I just gave her a hug. I gave her $5, whatever I had in my, and I said a prayer for her, but I went along my way. That was all I could do for her, And it was just, I was not only shown her life being benefit, I was shown her children's and her children's children and the ripple of her friends and everyone in her company and all the people who came to the food line where she was now in service. we're all so interconnected, and the little shifts in consciousness are the most magnificent things, because people tend to think about these grand, like, crossroads in life. But think about it in this way, like, if you had made slightly different choices, you would be at different crossroads.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's lots of different ways that we can choose, the paths we can choose. We're making decisions constantly every day on whether what to do and where to go. The small decisions we make every day make a difference. It pans out, and the paths separate each time we make a decision. So there may be little decisions and little, you know, detours, but they do count. They do count. Like you said to this lady, the most important, probably the thing you did was sit next to her and giving her a hug.
Mhm.
That's probably the most important thing. No
And I,
matter about the $5 or the rest of it, but
yeah,
the actual sitting down there with her and deciding to do that changed her pathway completely.
and mine too, because
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
it was a gift to me that I was able to give. Because I
yeah.
think there's, when we give, I always feel like we receive more. I know you said you're a teacher. I am also a teacher. I own a few yoga studios and yoga educational centers. And one of the things that I always feel so grateful for is that though I am the one instructing, I always feel like I learn far more than I could ever teach to my students,
Oh
because
yeah.
and I receive so much more from their wisdom and love and appreciation. And so, yeah, and then the idea of decisions, I think, is an important question too, because I remember being at different stages in my life where one decision was good, but the
Yeah.
other one was probably equally as good,
Right.
or one decision was bad, but the other decision or the other seeming option that it had was equally bad. So it was hard to know which way to go. So one thing that I have really honed in on, posteriorly to this whole experience of a near-death experience and the last 30 years of really moving from a more conscious and loving space, was answering that question, not only for myself, but for others. And I'd love to share that with you, because I think it is an important, like, what made me decide to sit rather than, it was late, I had appointments, and life is busy and all the things. Um, so one of the stories that I love to think about is the story that I read in a book called Einstein's Dreams.
Hmm.
And in this book, he talks about a woman walking across a snowy field in a white dress with a red hat. And I
Right.
think it's a great visual. And there's a gentleman up on the balcony watching and just kind of mesmerized, watching this beautiful woman walk across this white field. And a breeze comes and blows off her hat. And and then it shows you in the book three different scenarios: one where he does nothing, one where he calls out to her but never meets her, and another where he calls out to her and runs and gives her the hat, and they meet and marry and have children and all the stuff, right? So showing the different, like, of the same scenario,
Oh
and in
yeah.
that moment, none of those decisions would have been innately wrong or even overtly right. But what you have to do is, like, move from that which brings you the most joy.
Yeah.
And one of the things I was told to put in this book, Love Letters to Your Soul, is that each soul is here for the bliss of its own experience, its own existence. Basically, that's to quote verbatim, is like, each soul is here for the bliss of its own existence. And then they said to me, which I think it was said directly to me, but I think it's actually for anyone who hears this message, and
Right.
that means you, Chrystal. And I was like, me, I'm here for bliss. Each one of us is here for bliss. And here's the thing, that bliss includes contrast, choice, and change. It's not one-sided. It's not all sunny days. It's not all stormy days. It was just this bliss. And so when we move from our bliss or from joy, like that which would bring you most joy, let's say you have two equally wonderful options in your life, which, good for you, that's amazing. Which one really brings your soul joy? And you have to, like, embody this, like, feel this in your, viscerally feel
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
because otherwise you won't know. Or the same with the other, because sometimes both options are horrible. Like, I had a beloved fur baby that I had to put down recently. And, one option was to let her continue living um, and suffering, urinating on herself, walking into walls, feeling horrible. And the other was she still had good days, but I could put her down. And I remember I opted to take her, and based on some past experiences with some kitties, I decided that I would not let them suffer, that I would
Yeah.
put them down. So
Yeah.
I took my beloved Annabelle, and they like brought her cheese whiz, and she was so happy. And I'm like, oh my God, and here I am with this needle. Like it wasn't an easy
No, of
decision.
course. No, it's
She's
very
looking at me. I'm her security. Like there
yeah,
is no decision here. I could take her home, and she's throwing up and foaming and urinating herself. And that's also not good. So then I said, okay, Crystal, what if you love this animal, what would serve not me, but like serve her beautiful soul? I mean, she didn't have a lot of quality of life left. And that still is a decision that really aches my heart because it was
mm,
not easy. And life is like that.
mm.
I mean, one of the things in my yoga practice, I'm in my 60s, but I can still stand on my hand, put my foot behind my head, and drop into back bends. But something I couldn't do, by the way, at 35 when I
No,
started.
I can't. I couldn't do that since I was 9 months old.
The thing about yoga is that it teaches us that we do hard things so that we're prepared to do hard things because life can be, it's joyously hard, but it's hard. And the soul loves that because I mean, if there's no agitation, there's no pearl.
Oh no, and there's no education either. There's no knowledge if you don't push yourself and you don't, you know, if you're not feeling scared while you're doing something, is that you're not learning. You're not getting anything from it.
Yeah. So it's been a wonderful journey, and I think the most important thing that I'd like to share with your viewers is that love is truly all that matters. And when we talk about love, it's all encompassing. It's not just romantic love. It's not agape love. It's this. If you could possibly encompass everything within a container and including the container itself and on and on and on, that's what love is. There is nothing that you could do to earn this love or lose this love. And no one, and from my perspective, will be left behind. And
Right.
some of us will take detours, as we mentioned, into the darkness on a path back to the light, which might take millions of lives, who knows, for some people who've done some really chosen
Yeah,
because of
yeah,
free,
yeah,
chosen because we are given free will, which
yeah,
is, a gift and kind of a heavy burden when you
yeah,
think about it.
yeah,
Because if you made a creation, let's just think of our own children, like um, at some point with our children, we have to set them free. And we hope that we've given them the tools to make decisions that will be, beneficial for their lives and their souls and so that they can have a fulfilling existence. Um, but I think when we were created, the same thing is true. We're given the tools and then we're given the opportunity to challenge ourselves and to change through conscious choice and change and to really enhance the whole. And I feel like every single soul that exists is like a piece of a puzzle that without that piece would not be complete.
yeah. It all comes down to attachment. I think it was Dr. Wayne Dyer who said also that we make a big mistake in thinking that our children come for us, and they don't come for us, they come through us.
Yes.
And that's it. And that the attachment we have towards them is not good for us and it's not good for them.
Children come through you, Wayne Dyer.
That's right. They come through us and not for us. And that's attachment, being attached to anything. And there was another thing you said that also resonates with a lot of people, not like everyone who's had an NDE, or I've interviewed anyway, that they couldn't put into human words for the people who are watching us to understand the scale of the unconditional love they felt. It's impossible to put into words the the scale of it because we're of course we're human, and that's a different dimension. In that dimension, there's a lot of things we wouldn't understand anyway. The things you feel, things you go through, the emotions you can feel.
And
And
I
that's one thing that you said too.
I definitely feel that lack of ability to convey the message of this unconditional love. And also uh, the idea that as part of that unconditional love,
Yeah.
we are given free will. I mean, I think like the most loving and benevolent thing that the creator, our creator, did was to give us free will. Because sometimes could contemplate like, okay, if you're God, let's just use that word. If you're God, you could make us with a higher consciousness where we wouldn't have to have these murders and, you know, all the destruction and you could also make a world where there's no plagues and there's no suffering and there's no this and there's no that and we could all be kind of living in this utopia. Why?
No contrast. We're here for contrast. That's what we're here for.
And what I understood, let's put it this way, is that each soul is here for the experience of the experience. And because if we knew, let's say, the cellular structure of an apple, if we wrote poetry about an apple, if we did a magnificent, you know, still life painting of an apple, but we never bit the apple, we certainly would not know what an apple is. And so I think we're here to really have the experience, and that the contrast, the change, the choice that we're given is the most radical act of unconditional love possible. And also, I think it's the greatest responsibility for the human experience is to recognize the huge responsibility not only for our own souls, but for all those that we impact. And again, it's in these small shifts in the compass where we slightly shift and we end up in entirely new lands that we couldn't even have imagined
Right.
because it's context. And so I really I feel like a lot of people have this question, how is it possible that a benevolent, loving God creates such a horrible world of such suffering and darkness?
Yeah, there was that was asked to Esther Hicks. Have you heard of Esther Hicks and the teachings of Abraham? She was asked this once in one of her um, congresses or one of her talks, and her answer was brilliant. Her answer was, "You've got to see the whole picture. If you don't see the whole picture, you would never understand it, because no one in the eyes of your soul, there's not really good and bad. What there is experience. And if you see the experience as non-judgmental, there isn't a good and a bad. There's just an experience. And so,
So the
uh,
way that I term it, the way that I like to think about this, and because I've thought about it quite a bit, is like think about your life like a movie, like shadows and light just projecting off onto a screen, right? And then you could walk into this movie. It could be a comedy, it could be a murder, could be a documentary, it could be, you know, something artsy. But the minute that the lights, the projector's off and the lights go on, the screen goes back to white. It was always white. And that's our soul. But our soul is unaffected by the movies, but enhanced by the experience. So in other words, nothing could affect our soul, good or bad. And this experience of the experience, and when you think about your body, let's say being in pain, because we will all suffer. Like you will age, if you live long enough, you'll get sick, if you're lucky, you know, you'll have heartache, you'll have, you know,
if you're
you'll
lucky,
have, if you're lucky, because it's going to make you like one of the most transformational things for many people who feel like, why is God punishing me with this
yeah,
cancer, heart disease, or this
yeah,
diabetes, whatever they're dealing with? But I like to reframe that, like it's because you're strong enough to have the experience that's going to take you deeper into your expansion and the remembrance of who you really are. And by your healing and your empowerment and by your experience, the whole becomes more complete.
that's right.
And and so this experience, this light experience that we have when we turn the shadows off or we turn the projector off, we come back to the truth of who we are, which is pure, could never be, because we're the essence of God. God is not affected by shimmering, flickering shadows and light. However, that which is most beautiful to your Esther Hicks story is that which is always coming into manifestation,
Yeah.
which includes the shadows and the light as a movement of the divine. And again, I think some things we have to say, at least I have to say, I can't reconcile that. When I see great suffering, I cannot reconcile that. In my own heart, I can't say, oh, this is part of a divinity that I don't understand. I just have to have faith. And that's it. Because when I see somebody, you know, I don't even want to talk about the bad stuff that is out there.
Oh,
Someone,
yeah. There's lots of it.
child being abducted and sent to a sex camp, for
Yeah.
example. I
Thousands.
mean,
Yeah.
cannot reconcile that in my own soul.
No.
I can trust that I don't know what I don't know until I know it in the future,
Mm.
and that there is some divine force that is moving within all of this, and that we are not our bodies. And, when the body falls away, and I think when you're ready to leave this earth, when I was in the out of body experience, I was taken to, by the way, this is like in the 80s when this
Right.
happened.
Right.
1997, yeah, 1997, I think is when it happened. But anyway, it was at the end of the AIDS epidemic. AIDS back in that day was something similar to COVID,
Oh, yeah.
and people were homophobics,
Yeah.
and a great, bias against homosexuality, and this and that and the other. And a lot of these men were just dying alone in hospitals, and
And they were the
without
ones who most just suffered because they were scared shit of it. The actual homosexual community was the ones that mostly suffered. And apart from that, they were being abused by the rest of society. Apart from them being scared to death because the doctors were saying that it was them that, spread it. And it wasn't true, of course. It was
I
everything.
would know, because I remember my own fear, innocent fear of, like, if I got AIDS, I would just rather die. Because I mean, like the process of dying for AIDS was like you were emancipated and there was a great suffering. And I was taken to this hospital and I was shown these men, mostly men, dying of AIDS. And my thought was like they probably just want to die because they're going to die anyway. But what I was shown was so surprising, like shocking actually, that these gentlemen, these brilliant and powerful souls, had taken on this very hard path of homosexuality, which was, especially back in that day, was
Yeah,
there's a huge bias against it.
of
And they
course.
had taken it on as a path of like enlightening the mass consciousness. And part of that would be that they would die from this horrific disease. But what I was shown is that their souls were really enjoying every last breath of life, even the suffering. And I was like shocked, like, oh, okay. This is something that their soul was longing for, because this is how they could contribute. This is how they could, perhaps karmic path or whatever was going on, but they could contribute to the betterment of all, including their own soul. And most importantly, I think one of the things that we should think about is we always want to fix something outside of ourselves, when really, if we want to make the world a better place, we need to become better people. It always starts with us.
Of
It's
course.
easy to look at, well, they're bad and that's
Oh,
bad and
yeah.
that's, but what about, I saw Neil Donald Walsh, who wrote Conversations with God.
God, yeah.
And
I read them.
shortly after the planes went down in New York City, it was a big deal here in the United States. And I remember being so afraid for my children, and afraid for our country at that time, because that had never really happened in the United States. And so I went to this big conference where Neil, and I stood up, I had a question, and I said, well, what about, like Hitler and Stalin and pedophiles, and what about the towers going down, and what kind of God is this? And he very calmly said to me, he said, well, you look like you have a nice life. You look like you're abundant and you're beautiful. And what are you complaining about? Your children are fine. What's the problem? I said, yeah, but what about this and then that? I can't reconcile this within me. It's not the kind of world I want to live in. And then he said, okay, Chrystal, is there, have you ever lied? And I was kind of like this, I'm on stage, right?
Everyone's looking at you. Of
And I'm like, well, yes.
course. Everyone
Have
has.
you ever hurt anyone?
Yeah.
Yes. Have you ever murdered? Maybe not a person, but like, have you eaten an animal? Have you killed an ant, a mosquito? I'm like, yes. Is there any war inside of you? Any depravity inside of you? Any lies inside of you? Well, yes. He said, heal that, work on that. And I never forgot that because, it's so easy to look out in the world and see all this bad stuff, but then where is it inside of me? Because we know in a magnetic universe, we can only see that which we are. And so even if there's a speck within me, if it's a speck, then I get to heal that. And then as I heal that, I heal the mass consciousness till there's a tipping point
Of course.
and everything changes.
Yeah.
So it's just such a beautiful path. And then coming back to the truth of everything, the main message that I'd like to share is that all of this is great. These are tools, but the one abiding tool that really is the guiding force of my life is I always ask this one question. And it is, what is my most loving thought, word, and action in this situation, with this person, with myself? And then I try, and I don't always succeed, but then I try to do that. And I ask myself, in this moment, what's my most loving? And sometimes my most loving is not that nice. I'm going to just be honest. Like sometimes it's just like cuss somebody out. That's my most loving. Other times I'm a way more benevolent. Mostly in this time in my life, I've come to a point where I've done a lot of inner work and spiritual work and meditation and deep contemplation, self-inquiry, where it's a lot easier. But that just the minute when you think you've got it, you'll be tested. So you, you think,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I've got this. I can hold my center and my peace, and then something's going to come. And just like in the metaphoric stories in the Bible where Peter tells Christ, I will never deny you, and he says,
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
deny you. But then, by the time the cock crows three times, you
Maybe
know.
three times. Yeah.
And I think that's true for all of us, because we're not cooked, we're not done. And whatever possibilities that we've gotten to in our life, evolutionary speaking of remembrance of the truth, there's always more.
Of
And
course.
so once you get to that place, there'll be something else that's going to trigger you,
Oh,
or
yes.
hopefully, because that's how we grow. One of my favorite teachers is Gangaji, and she wrote the book A Diamond in Your Pocket. And in one of her speeches, she says, let your heart be broken 1,000 times every day so that you can learn to love more fully. And I
Beautiful.
think that's the opposite of what we want, right? We try not for our heart to be broken. And it's something that I've been doing recently, and I think might be helpful to some of your viewers, is what we call spiritual bypassing in many of the community is like, we reframe things like, oh, that's divine order at work, or we try to meditate through the discomfort, or we, over exercise, or we overeat, or we numb, or we run, or we freeze, or whatever we do to manage our stress. But what I've been working on of recent as an evolutionary process, and it's been quite challenging, truthfully, is to sit with my own discomfort without reframing it, without meditating through it, but just allowing it to be like the weather.
Yeah, yeah. Like be
This is the
just
weather right
being there.
now.
Yeah, feeling it and
Just
acknowledging
completely
it.
different. I think I started with talking about how my mom had moved from drinking and overeating, over smoking to overeating. And I think it's because she didn't have the coping skills. First of all, she didn't have the psychological skills of reframing and this and that and the other, but she certainly didn't have, bless her soul, because she was the perfect mom for me, to sit with her own discomfort. And, I've had the opportunity to let my heart be broken many, many times, especially during this last year, which has been very turbulent and very wonderful at the same time. But just to sit with it, and I have a lot of compassion for people because there are moments when things seem so dark and
Yeah,
so dismal
yeah,
that it's hard to even brush your teeth.
yeah.
Like I always know
Yes.
that I'm in that place because I'm like, I really don't want to brush my teeth. I force myself to brush my teeth. You
Yeah.
have a beautiful smile. I'm just like, you have no idea how much work that is, because that's like a thing.
Yeah, I know what you
To
mean.
really sit with it, it's not necessarily easy, and it's a real thing. Doesn't necessarily have to be hard. It will pass. Everything has a beginning, middle, and end.
Of course.
But and I'm not saying don't reframe it and don't spiritually bypass it if you're not ready to sit with it, by the way, because I did that for years and it does work and it's helpful, but you'll still have to come back to the core, the thing that you're here to learn. which for me, I mean, will keep reappearing until I make peace with that experience and that energy, and I reconcile it within me in a way that it basically goes back into the source of which it was born, back into love, you know.
Yeah, that's going back to what you said about your mother, well, your childhood. We've lived very similar childhoods, you and me. Although my mother wasn't an alcoholic, but my mother was Italian, my father was English.
Mm.
And he'd just come out, he was a Marine. He'd just come out of the Marines, because all his family, or my father's family, were in the Army or the Navy or the RAF, and my father was a Marine. And he'd just come out, he was 41, I think, when he met my mother. My mother was a 23-year-old Italian who just arrived in England,
Oh,
come from
wow.
a small village in Naples, hardly spoke any English whatsoever. Met this guy 3 times and married him.
Wow.
And they stayed together 40 years until they died. They're both dead now. And they had no idea how to bring up children.
Mm.
No idea. He was just a rough Marine who, you know, it was very similar to your life. They were never there. Because my father worked daytime, my mother worked at nights in a restaurant, washing dishes. And they worked hard. They did work hard, and they did their best. And this is what I was the message I'm trying to get across here is that I blamed them for years for not having
Mm.
a childhood, for not having a mother or a father present, or not being cared for. And I came to realize that it wasn't their fault. They did what they could, and they do their best. And that sentence I heard Wayne Dyer said about his father, Dr. Wayne Dyer, because his father was an alcoholic, and he left his mom, and he had 7 or 8 children. I don't know how many there were, and they were put into homes, and because her mother couldn't keep them, so she would take him out, this, that. And he hated his father until one day he realized that he
Mm.
had to forgive his father to carry on. So he went to his grave, and he actually went there to spit on it. But when he got there, he something came over him, and he changed, and he said to his father, "Who am I to judge you and how you lived your life and what you went through to the way you taught me?" And so it's very similar. And what I wanted to get across to the public was that don't blame your parents for what they do, because they have a different perception than what you do of how you that you suffered, and this was probably suffered because of them, like you say, but you don't know what they've been through. You don't know what decisions they've made. You don't know. So try to look past that and say, look, they brought you into this world. And
And also, I'd like just to add to that is that on an energetic level, I believe that we come into the correct family where we have the most possibility of healing our own drama and trauma. And, that's why I said my mom was the perfect mom for me, because whatever she said, which was usually negative, would really make me angry and feel the fire of my success. So she was like the perfect, and I know that, to your point, that including me, like, and you and all of us, we're all doing the best that we can in this
yeah,
moment, and until we can do better. Like,
yeah,
I know that I have for sure failed my children. I've been great for my children. And hopefully we're evolving. Like,
of course,
and
yeah,
my circumstances are different than my parents as well. So it's you can't really compare, like, oh, I'm a better parent than they are. And maybe with what they had, they were actually a better parent.
yeah,
They're not, with the suffering and the hardship that they went through. And similar to that story, I remember when my dad was absent and he left my mom, and he didn't help financially, and my mom was in a very bad place, and we lived in poverty. And then he came back into our lives later and wanted to, like, be dad. And I was like, okay. I was like, he you I don't he said, I love you kids. And I'm like, give me a definition of what love means when you don't know me. Like, you really don't know me. You knew me when I was 5, but that is not who I am now. And I said, and I really don't. I'm happy to have a relationship and get to know you, but I don't really want you to say that you love me unless you want to say it in the universal sense, because you really, to love someone, you really need to be there and care for them and this and that. And he
Okay.
said something really, really rude, like I don't know what your mother effing did to you, but you're all messed up. He is. And I said, okay, that's fine. We don't
Oh
really
dear.
need relationship. I never want to speak to you again. And he called my mother bad names, like, because she was really obese at that point. And my mom, when she was young, was like Marilyn Monroe. Like, she was so beautiful. So I disconnected from him, and he was actually not such a nice guy, truthfully.
Mm.
And then my sister called me, and I was on a vacation in, I think, Italy or something, and I got this phone call, and she said, Dad died. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Who died? What? Like, for me, when I was a kid, I would tell everybody that my dad died in the Vietnam War,
All
because
right.
then people would go, oh, poor Crystal, she doesn't have a dad. Instead of saying that he abandoned the family, I
Yeah.
made him a hero, right? So for me, he had been dead for a long time.
Yeah.
But that night, I remember, like, in the hotel room, the lights flickering on and off, and I knew it was him. And I said, listen, like, I don't believe in this whole, like, go to hell thing. I'm not down for that. I don't believe in that. And I said, you did the best that you can with what you have. I like me. Like, I turned out amazing in my perception of myself. So I like who I am. And whatever part that you played in that, whether it was abandonment or neglect, that's fine. You're free. You're free. You're free. You're not going to hell because of me.
No.
That's not possible. I guess I completely set you free. And I wasn't even forgiveness. There was nothing to forgive. It was like, you're just free.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And and I felt that in my heart, like, and there's someone out there who thinks that I was the one who crushed them. It could be a friend, a boyfriend,
Yeah. Yeah.
something that and I had no idea I was doing it, and I was just doing the best that I could. And I believe that's the same with him. And I believe I chose this father because I had to find my own self-worth. And there are horrible things that happen in life. Like,
Oh yeah.
for for example, this same father that I'm talking about, like, I did something wrong, and he took my hair and filled up the bathtub and put me in my head underwater until I passed out. And I remember thinking, I wish I could just go down the drain like a star. And then I woke up trembling on the floor, like, this is the father that
Yeah.
I had.
Yeah.
So these are horrible things that actually do happen. So when people try to spiritually bypass it, I'm not down for that.
Yeah.
But I do think that my soul benefited from having these experiences, because when someone looks in my eyes and they say, I just can't because of this horrible thing, I'm like, yes, you can.
Yes, you can. Yeah.
You can. And it's not easy. And I'm not going to say it's
Oh
going to be
no.
easy. And you
No.
don't have to do it alone, by the way. We have angels and guides all around us. And there's people that will just sit down on a bench with you randomly because their heart is full of love. And so we're all in this together. And I know that if you're a strong soul, you're going to take on a little bit more weight, like you have, Peter, with your childhood, so that made you this amazing, grounded man that could actually help others.
Yeah.
And if you hadn't had that, let's say you had given this silver spoon and you had gotten to all the Ivy League schools and all the best of this and the best of that, you might have just turned out to be arrogant and not very nice. I mean, you just,
Yeah. Yeah. Possibly. Possibly. It
I
could have.
mean, there's
It
always,
could have went
we
anyway.
don't know. And the timelines that we see,
Oh yeah.
like, I believe that the most loving possibility is what we get to experience.
Yeah.
We are part of the choice. We're not just set down here like some kind of punishment. It really makes me sad when I hear people talking about the earthly experience as some kind of, hell or punishment or lower world. This place is, I believe that is much sought after in the soul realm, because it's a world of great expansion
Yeah.
and a place of rapid growth and opportunity and freedom, which our soul loves freedom.
That's right. I agree with you. Totally. Totally. And I, I was lucky in some ways because I I forgive my father when he was dead. I mean, he died when I was 18. So I didn't have to, because I'm with my mother. I love my mother dearly, although she wasn't there. and she didn't she wasn't very affectionate with us, or wasn't very close to us. She was always there, and
Mm.
she worked. I know she worked very, very hard to keep us to keep food on the table and to keep the house running and everything like that. Both of them did, and she had to live on after my dad died at 18. When I was 18, I left home when I was 17. It's the same as you. And my brothers is I got two older brothers. They both left too because nobody could support him. Because he was just unsupportable. It was horrible. He used to beat us a lot, and the first answer he would have was with a stick or with a strap or with his hand or whatever. He didn't know how to speak, communicate. He used his violence, and that was the way he was brought up. He was brought up in a family of, I don't know if there was eight of them. There was four, five brothers and three sisters, and his father was like that. They brought him up the hard way and threw them into the Navy, into the Army, into the Marines, and they said that you have to be a man, you have to do this, you have to do that. And so, what does he know? He was brought up like that. So, and that's how he brought us up. He thought that was the way to do it. You do as I say, and that's it, without talking to us and asking us our opinion or asking us. And I've done completely the opposite with my
Mm.
children. I've always asked them their opinion. I've always asked them, and there's only one thing I've always drilled into them, that the only thing I wanted from them was respect. And I said, you respect everyone who's older than you. You respect anyone who's old, anyone who's wiser than you, anyone. You listen and you respect them, and that's the most important thing I've shown them. Everything else, I'm free to listen and to
That
let.
was such a gift your dad gave to you because you would not have done the violence because you knew how
Never.
horrible that was for you.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
such a gift, and yet it was a hard thing for you to go through, but you made it through that dark night, and then your children have a different experience, and hopefully our children, I mean, the goal is that they're better than us, right?
That's right. Yeah, you should try to show them, what it is to be a family, what it is to have respect for the elder people, to respect others. To respect is very important in this world, and it takes years to earn, and it takes a second to lose. And I think it's very, very important. It's very important to,
Take it back when you say or things, to people that are disrespectful.
yeah,
There's no taking it back.
yeah, yeah. That's right. That's right. It's true, and it's very important. I said you can have. I said to it all the time since I even do now, and they're in their 20s. I say to them that you can think whatever you want. You can have your ideas, but you have to respect other people's ideas, whatever they are, whatever they are. Whether it's completely the opposite to you, you can still have a conversation or have a beer with a guy who has the completely opposite ideas to you. Just have to respect it. That's all. Just don't talk about that that subject.
Or if it's too like opposite of you, then you can also choose not to have that company,
Yeah,
because there's some,
of
because it's always a choice. Like I think we are the sum total of our surroundings and the people that we choose
course.
to. So if somebody has a different lifestyle or a different worldview that's completely opposite of mine, it's not my job to convince them.
Oh no,
Uh,
no, 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 no.
or even have that conversation many times. I will just honor that that's their truth and that's where they're at, until they have more information. That's what they're gonna believe, and that's fine. So I'm very picky with who I allow into my space and who I,
Oh, me
especially
too. Mm.
my intimate space, let's put it that way, because I'm very loving to, you know, everyone that I meet. They say, and I think this is kind of a cute analogy, but they say you're either a peach or a cantaloupe.
Yeah,
The,
I'm
the
pretty
peach,
similar.
the peach is soft on the outside, but
Yeah,
to get to the core, like,
yeah, it's hard.
and then the cantaloupe is hard on the outside, but they're smushy in the middle once you get
Yeah,
past that.
yeah.
I would definitely think I'm more of a peach, but
When it comes down to also to vibration, because as you get into more a spiritual place, as you get older, you seem to feel that whether you belong with someone or not, whether that is a real friend, or that is a person you want to be with, or a person you want near you, or someone just when you speak to them now and again, and that's it. To let into that intimate space, as you call it, you
Mhm.
feel it, and when it doesn't feel right, you just keep them away.
That's true. And then the question is, and again, for many young people, is how to make those decisions
Mm.
because it's hard to know sometimes because there's some good qualities and some bad qualities, and I'm not sure. And so I'm always about empowering people to make better choices. So the ideal of spiritual bypassing, let's say you feel something in your heart like a betrayal
Mm.
or a hurt. And so what you do is you take that energy and you bring it up to your brain or you reframe it, right? And you make it okay. But now that energy is in your brain, right? It's still there. So, but on both places, heart or brain, there is a witness consciousness. And the witness consciousness is the one behind the thinker behind the thoughts, the doer behind the doing, the experiencer behind the experience. So, something I'd like to offer to your viewers as a gift of my near death experience and this path of love is that when we move from witness consciousness, which is always neutral, then we make better decisions. And the witness consciousness doesn't matter if it's in the heart or the brain or where it's at, it's witnessing the absolute truth of the experience. Like it's a storm, it's a sunny day, it's wilting, it's blossoming. And there's no judgment on, oh, it shouldn't be storming, oh, it shouldn't be wilting, oh, it should be. There's just this presence. It's almost like if you take a moment and you think about it, like who's thinking? Like if I ask you to think about a purple elephant, or not think about it, you're probably going to think about it. You
Right.
could also create your own thoughts. You could start making a beautiful vacation scene in your head, and that's a creative thought. But either one of those two, there is a witness to that either creation or processing of thoughts. And that witness consciousness is this connection to the divine, or connection to the truth, or connection to the loving universe, where all the Akashic records, all the wisdom is, and you'll make more, more holistic, more loving, more gracious choices when you move from this space. And it might be quite surprising because it might be contrary to what most people think that, like, for example, you making peace with a violent father, when people think, well, that's crazy. Like you should be angry, but when you move from this witness consciousness, which is above and beyond this incorporeal life, um, there's a different experience of it. And then you have to admit, even to yourself, that you too have failed others.
Yeah.
And not in that way or that degree, but there is a speck inside of you that could also be worked on. Like we're making the world better by becoming better. And like I wish, people ask me, well, are you enlightened? And I said, I'm enlightened to the degree that I am enlightened right now. That's it. But
Yeah.
I'm not cooked, and I might take two steps forward, one back. I might leap forward, but it's really not the point of it. The point of it is in each moment, I'm always trying to move from the highest expression of love possible within that circumstance and that time and that space of my life. And to really be present as a witness to it all. And here's the other thing, like when you become a witness, like even in yoga, it's taught me like and you're in a really difficult pose, like people go, that's amazing. You can like put your foot behind your head. It's a painful pose, by the way. Just let me tell you, this is a painful pose.
I agree. I probably wouldn't be able to do that in years. So,
But when you become the witness of it, when you witness the discomfort, then you're not adding any resistance to the discomfort.
right.
And this is how life is. When hard things come, you become the witness. It's so yes, you have the hard thing, but you're not resisting that, which brings more pain to that very expression of pain. And trusting that all things will come and with a beginning, middle, and end, then you know that this too shall pass. And so you just become the witness and trust that there is a deeper. I always say, welcome. What do you have to teach me to these beautiful sunny days and stormy nights? And I just say, welcome. So I say yes to life, even if that's saying yes to a no. And
Right.
there's resistance. So I think we started the conversation by saying, I really don't have a lot of desires in my life.
Yeah.
I used to, when I was younger, I had all these desires, and now I really don't have desire except to share the message of unconditional love in the way that I can. Um, but the desire for accolades, the desire for fame, the desire for fortune, it seems so irrelevant, truthfully. If
Yeah.
I can one person's life in a positive way, then that's far more worthy of a mission than any of the other accolades of
Yeah,
or brownie points of life, you know.
right. That's right. Yeah, I felt for years that my one of my desires, one of my objectives was to touch children's lives, to try and teach them to think for themselves, to not to accept everything just for face value, um, to show them there is a different um, there's a different perspective than just from what everyone's telling them. There's a spiritual side to everything. Because I used to teach religion as well. It was shoved on me, pushed on me because nobody wanted to teach it. So I said, okay, if I'm going to teach it, I'm going to teach it my way. I'm not going to teach Catholic Christian religion. I'm going to teach religion in general, what it means, what it is, and what they teach in these religions, because they're all basically the same. The base of all religion are the same. And in that spiritual class, we used to meditate for 5 minutes. I used to show them how to meditate and to talk about what wholeness is, for example. That was one subject that we spoke for weeks on. What's wholeness? About the ocean and the drop of water and things like that. They used to love it. And that was my mission for many, many years. Many, many years. And I loved it.
And
And
I think it's so important our teachers, because I know in my own life, um, especially with my childhood, and you probably feel the same, like there were certain teachers that really made a difference in my life by believing in, you know, just by simply believing in me.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
all they did. And I've had so many, like when I couldn't even believe in myself and they
Yeah.
believed it. They saw something in me that I didn't even see.
Yeah.
Like they saw the seed that would become the forest. And
Mm.
without their love and guidance, I think this world would be, you know, so I'm always in awe and honor of teachers that teach, especially these formative year classes, because it does make a difference. And I have met some teachers that have less benevolent, kind, and altruistic goals as teachers, and that always makes me sad
Oh, there's
because
lots of them. There's lots
I,
of them.
yeah, I hate children. I just like having 3 weeks, 3 months off in the summer. I'm
That's
like,
it. That's it. They say, I'm here to teach content. That's it. You're not. You're an educator. You're not here to teach content. You're not here to teach information. You're here to educate these children on being themselves. You're forming their characters. You're with them 7 or 8 hours a day.
more than their parents.
Right, that's right. And they're going to copy everything you do. They're going to look at you as an idol, as like a model. So you have to portray what you think they should act like. So if you're authoritative all the time, they're going to want to be like that. They think, oh, I have to be like that when I'm older because look, my teacher's like that. So yeah, it's not an easy job, and unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are in it that shouldn't be. But
Hmm.
there are exceptions.
Everything, right? We can all balance it out. So
I'm right.
all we
Oh,
can do is do our best. I mean, I have to say I've had really bad teachers and I've had really good teachers, and the ones that impacted me were the good ones.
oh, of course, yeah. You always remember. I
Bad
still,
teachers, kind of like just forget them.
I still run into children I've taught who now are parents and have kids of their own and go to the school I used to teach at. And I run into them in the street, and they say, "Oh, Mr. Peter," and I start to say hello to, yes, do I know you? And say, yes, you taught me in year one or year two. And I say, well, yeah, that's why I don't remember you. Big guy, 6 foot with a beard, with kids in his arms. Of course, I don't remember you. Mm.
Gotta be so fulfilling, Peter. Wow.
That is lovely. It's lovely because they always say, "Oh, I remember you were the first teacher who told me that how to add or how to subtract or how to to do something they remember or to tie up my shoelaces, things like that, small things." And they say they always remember that those sort of
Oh,
things.
thank you for that. Thank you.
It
The
is
world needs
very
more teachers like that for
yeah,
sure.
it's very fulfilling, very
I have
fulfilling.
grandchildren now, and I'm really grateful for the good teachers, you know.
So let's hope that there's many more of them in the future. Let's hope. But there are some very good teachers out there. I've met some young teachers who are very, very good at their jobs, and very passionate and compassionate, both passionate and compassionate about what they do.
Right.
That's good. Okay, well, thank you very much for being there. I'll leave your the link to your page, to your web page, to in the description of the video. So anyone who wants to see your art or even talk to you, they can go to that page. And I'll put the link also to your book in the description of the video, of this video. So if anyone wants to get your book, just go into there and push the link and you go straight to.
My email for them to connect with me because I think the website, we just migrated it. So if you could put just the email, ChrystalRaeSoul@gmail.com, that's the best way to contact me right now while they're migrating the website.
Okay, I'll put that in the description of the video too. So that's great. So thank you very much for coming on the show. Thank you very much for telling us all this information that you experience you've had, and it's been lovely having you. And I hope to have you back soon.
Yes, we'll do it in Spanish.
Yeah, we have to do it in Spanish too. It's going to be great. Thanks very much. See you soon. Okay, viewers, thank you for being there again once more, another week. And next week we'll be back again with a new guest. And who knows where they might be from? We don't know yet. It could be from the United States, could be from the South America, Central America, maybe Africa. We don't know. We'll see you next week. So, Juana.